Hi, and welcome to Public Health Matters, a monthly program dedicated to discussing public health issues in our community. This program is sponsored by the Middlebrook Regional Health Commission, which serves the towns of Bound Brook, Greenbrook, Middlesex, South Bound Brook, Warren, and Watchung. My name is Colleen McKay-Wharton, and I'm the health educator with the Commission. Our goal for Public Health Matters is to give you a program that will provide useful information to help you better understand important public health issues, and in particular, what you can do to reduce any risks associated with them. Later this month is National Child Passenger Safety Week, when organizations across the country will be highlighting the importance of using appropriate car seats for infants, toddlers, and children. To share that information today with us is guest Diana Staris, the Injury Prevention Coordinator at the Level 1 Trauma Center of Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital. And Diana is also the coordinator of Safe Kids Middlesex County. Diana, thank you so much for joining us again today. It's great to have you back.
Thank you for having me, Colleen.
You know, Diana, I just want to share something first before we begin. Something I found that says, according to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, all 50 states and the District of Columbia all have laws in place regarding child passenger safety.
Correct.
You know, not only where they sit, but the types of car seats to use, how they should be installed, etc. But in spite of that, motor vehicles are still a leading cause of injury and even death amongst children. So is that right? Is that accurate?
That is true. That motor vehicle crashes are the leading cause of death for children 2 to 14.
Okay.
In spite of all the laws that are out there. And New Jersey has a great law.
Okay.
We really do have a very strong law. It's a primary law.
Okay.
It says that children through the age of 8 or 80 pounds must be in some sort of car seat or booster seat in the back seat. And that's very important.
Right.
But in spite of that, we know that we are still seeing a lot of injuries and deaths related to motor vehicle crashes for this age group.
Okay.
So
Certain things that can be preventable.
Right. Well, yeah, we know that if somebody is properly restrained, if a child is properly restrained, they are 80% less likely to have an injury or die in a car crash.
And that's significant,
right.
80%.
Right.
Well, you know, we're going to speak in a few minutes about all of the different types of child safety seats, and as a parent, and I think parents who are listening and watching this will know, they're not as clear-cut as they seem to be. They seem easy to install and you think you're doing it properly, but when we talk a little bit later, you can maybe help us point out some of the things that we're doing wrong as parents. But before we do that, can we talk a little bit about, you know, before we get in the car, what are some areas of concern that parents should be thinking about to ensure safety of children around them?
Okay, great. We always talk to parents and to children about being safe in and around cars.
Okay.
So when we're talking about that, some of the things that we address are things like back-over injuries. Unfortunately, we hear in the news more frequently than we would like that a child has been behind a vehicle, there's a big blind spot, you can't see them, and the driver gets in the car and starts backing up, whether that be in a driveway or a parking lot.
Okay.
So what we really tell parents is that before you get in your vehicle, you should take 30 seconds and walk around your vehicle to make sure that there are no children, no pets, no bicycles, no nothing, before you back out of the driveway or back out of a parking spot. And that really can help to address that problem. A lot of parents are starting to rely on cameras in the back of their cars and those ding, 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 dings that go off if there's something behind your vehicle. But really, we're still telling parents, don't rely on the technology. Just take a walk around the vehicle to make sure that there's nothing behind your car before you start backing up.
Okay.
We also address things like not leaving your child unattended in a vehicle. And that goes for infants through all ages.
Okay.
Children should not be left alone in a vehicle, even if you have to run in the store for milk, and that's all you're doing. Your child should come with you. Because we know that things happen in cars that wouldn't happen otherwise. For instance, it gets very hot in a vehicle very quickly. Even on a day like today when it's a little overcast and the sun's not really out that much, it still can get very, very hot in a vehicle. In 10 minutes, the temperature can rise by about 20 degrees. Parents don't think about that. So children can get overheated very easily. They don't adjust to temperature as well as we do.
Right.
So, you know, your child's sleeping in the back seat and you don't really want to disturb them, you should disturb them.
Just
take them out of the
in.
car and bring them with you.
Okay. Now, cold temperatures are also an issue.
Yes.
It's not just the overheated car.
Any time of the year, children should not be left unattended in the vehicle. There's just too many things that can happen. It's way too risky and dangerous. So.
Okay. And are there some other areas? I think you had also mentioned issues about trunks, right? And those are another aspect of...
Right. What we teach parents and children is that cars are not play places.
Right.
Cars are for transporting, trunks are for storage, and that's what they're for. So we want to teach kids that they shouldn't be playing in cars. A lot of
their favorite thing to do.
Right,
I know.
Right.
A lot just want to sit and make believe they're a driver.
Right, and a lot of things can happen. I mean, aside from that, you know, a gear shift can move and the car can stop rolling, or kids can get in the trunk and get trapped in the trunk and nobody knows they're there. Right. Kids' arms and heads get stuck in electric windows. All of those kinds of things can be avoided if we teach children not to play in the car. So when the car is parked in the driveway, it should be locked and the key should be out of reach, so we don't have to even worry about that. Okay.
Now, you know, if we were to move from the in and around the car, the around the car portion of it, is there a safest spot, so to speak, for a child to be placed regardless of age, or does that change?
Our law in New Jersey talks about that children, as long as they're in a child seat or booster seat, belong in the back seat. So that means in New Jersey, until a child is 8 years old or weighs 80 pounds, they belong in a car seat or booster seat, and they should be in the back seat. Okay. Now, what we teach is that the safest place for a child to be is in the back seat, up until they're about 13 or so. Okay,
so regardless of being in a booster seat or a car seat of any sort, keep them in the back anyway.
Exactly, and that is due to airbags. We all have airbags in the front of our vehicles now. Some even have side airbags, but we know that cars today have front airbags. And airbags, whether they are considered smart airbags or not, come out with a very strong force, and they are intended for adult-sized bodies. They are not intended to be able to protect a child without hurting them also. So if your child is around 13, that's about when they have an adult-sized body, and that's when it's safe to start letting them sit in the front seat. Obviously, it's the parents' discretion.
No matter how much they beg.
Right, exactly,
no matter how much
exactly.
they beg.
But again, parents need to remember that they are the parents, and they get to set the rules. That's right. So if the safest place for your child to be is the back seat, then that's where they should be sitting.
Okay. Now, you mentioned briefly a little bit about the laws in New Jersey. So let's talk about those a little bit. What is what are the seat buckling laws, just to be sure we're all clear? I mean, we know we have to buckle up, but
the law in New Jersey says that every passenger in every vehicle belongs buckled up, whether you're in the front seat or the back seat. It doesn't matter how far you're going or anything like that, you belong buckled up.
Is that new? Is that, because my recollection is always just the front seat.
Up until February of this year, the law stated that backseat passengers over the age of 18 did not have to be buckled. But former Governor Corzine, before he left office, signed into law that backseat passengers also need to be buckled. So it's a primary law. You can be stopped for not having your seatbelt on in the front seat, just because of not having your seatbelt on. In the back seat, it's a secondary law, which means that an officer would have to stop you for some other infraction and then see that you're not buckled in the back seat and give
and that
you
would be a very
citation
difficult thing to see otherwise. I can understand that. And it's interesting that you used a term earlier, sort of referring to best practice. It's not just because there's a law, it doesn't mean you necessarily stop at that point of what the law says.
Correct.
And parents are responsible for conveying that, I think.
Exactly, exactly. We know that some of our laws stop short of what is the safest way. So we want to make sure that parents understand and are educated about what is the safest way to transport their family and follow those rules, if you will.
And role modeling.
Even,
If a parent buckles.
We know that if parents are buckled, that kids are more likely to be buckled. And we know that if parents aren't buckling, that kids are more likely to be riding unrestrained. And from the minute your child gets in the car with you, they're watching what you're doing as a driver. So even as your child gets older and they are now driving, they're going to be modeling your behavior.
That's right.
So if you're aggressive in the car, they're more likely to be aggressive in the car. And if you're, less likely to perhaps turn on a turn signal, your child might be less likely when they become a driver to do that also. So seatbelts are very important.
Right. Well, thank you for all of that. I think what we're going to do is take a very quick break, and when we come back, we're going to go through the different types of car seats that are available, and when they should be used, how they should be used, and have a live model here to demonstrate proper use of a car seat as well. So we'll be right back.
In the event of a car crash, 3 out of 4 kids are not as secure as they should be because their car seats are not used correctly. But the latch system makes it easier to get it right and to hold your kids tight. Anchor, tether, latch. Learn more at safercar.gov.
Diana, in your role as injury prevention coordinator, at Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital, you do a lot of this, right? A lot of car safety seat checks and installations. Tell us a little bit about your role there and your experience with doing this.
Sure. Shortly after I started, about 6.5 years ago, I went to a class offered by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration to become a child passenger safety technician. Okay. It's a 32-hour class, and we learn everything and anything.
32 hours?
32 hours, yes. Okay. And people always say, what could you possibly be learning for 32 hours? But honestly, there's a lot to learn. There are many different car seats out there. There's many different ways they can be installed. There's laws and rules and regulations. So we go to a class. So
parents shouldn't feel too bad when they can't get it in right the first time.
No, that's why we do the education. We really try and help parents to understand the importance and how it's supposed to work. So I became a technician and then more recently became an instructor. Okay. So that's part of my role as the injury prevention coordinator at Robert Wood.
Excellent, excellent. So you are well qualified to help lead us along the way here.
I try.
Tell us what are we starting with?
Okay, we're starting off talking about infants riding in vehicles. Okay. And this is a convertible seat. Okay. It can go rear-facing for an infant and forward-facing for a toddler, and we'll talk about the toddler aspect. Okay. There are also infant-only seats, the kind that you see that have the carrier on them.
Pull out and take with you.
And those are intended only to go rear-facing, and they are only intended for infants. All right. So when an infant is in a vehicle, very, very important, a few key points. Okay. One is that they belong rear-facing. Right. All right. And the reason for that is because an infant's neck and head need to be supported. Right. They don't have strong muscle tone. Their head is much, they grow into their head, so their head is much larger and heavier. So if you're in a crash in a rear-facing position, this seat is intended to ride up and support the head, the neck, and the back of that child and keep it straight and keep it stable to prevent injury. Right. Where the harness straps that are in the seat are intended to keep that child in the seat. Okay. One of the other important things about an infant seat is that it needs to be at the right incline, about a 45-degree incline. All right. And all of this is explained in the manual for the car seat, and there will be some information for the parent in the vehicle owner's manual. So both of those things are very important to have on hand when a parent goes to try and install a seat in a vehicle. Right. All right. Okay. Infants stay rear-facing by law in New Jersey until they are at least a year old and 20 pounds. And 20 pounds.
Not or 20 pounds.
Right. Both of those things need to be met, and that is the law in New Jersey. Okay. What we know is that the American Academy of Pediatrics says that the safest way for your infant or your young child to ride is rear-facing. Again, because of the support that the seat provides for the head and the neck and the spine. Okay.
And do they suggest even a little beyond that time?
What they suggest is that you keep your child rear-facing as long as possible to the upper weight limits of the seat. So, for instance, with this seat can stay rear-facing up to 35 pounds.
So you're talking 2 years, potentially. Right.
Over in Europe, kids stay rear-facing until they're 3 years old. Okay. All right? So that's the best and safest way for a child to ride.
Got it. All right.
When a child gets to a point where a parent's ready to turn them around, they've gotten past that at least 1 year and 20 pound mark, then this particular kind of seat, which is a convertible seat, can be turned around. Okay. And basically, there's a foot here that we will flip over, just like this. And now we're going to put the seat in a forward-facing position. And now you can see it's much more upright. Right.
Now, before you go further on this, if I can ask you a question, while we're not focusing on installation, I realize when it's when it's a rear-facing seat, there are a couple of ways that it can be installed. Is that right?
Actually, either way.
Either way.
No matter what kind of car seat it is.